It's Wednesday, January 27. This is the news on a PBCJ. I'm Carol Francis. Effective February 1, churches will have the green light to host funerals, but with certain stipulations. So says Prime Minister Andrew Holness. He gave an update in Parliament on Tuesday. Simone Absalom Gale reports.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says churches can now host funerals, but the rule of 15 applies.
What we are proposing is that the family of no more than 10 and the clergy or officiating ministers of no more than 5 can be in the church with the casket holding the religious rites of a funeral. So, Madam Speaker, we are not allowing mass open-ended funerals, regardless of how large the church is. It is the same rule that is applied at the graveside would be the same rule that is applied in the church.
The Prime Minister says the measures will be monitored for a month and extended pending assessment of compliance. Mr. Holness also says the relevant ministers will be reviewing proposals on the reopening of the entertainment sector.
I personally believe that there are some measures that can be put in place. The question is whether or not those measures would make the business economically viable. And so greater thought needs to be put into that. There are persons who say, well, just only approve open-air events. Just keep them within the time of the curfew. Everyone who goes in, they have to take a rapid test. Or, you know, they have all kinds of modalities and strategies that are being proposed. What I've directed to be done is that the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, the Minister of Local Government and the Minister of Health, they will be meeting next week, and I'm not certain you're going to be meeting with the industry just yet, but they're going to meet, review the proposals that have been given, because several proposals have been sent into the government about how the industry can return to some kind of functionality. So we're going to review those, and at the end of that review, we will come back to Parliament and report as to what might be possible.
According to Mr. Holness, for public passenger buses, there will be allowance of a limited number of standing passengers based on the seating capacity of the bus.
We're approving 1 passenger standing for every 5 seats in the bus. So if you have the common 30-seater, then you could have 6 persons standing in the bus, and we estimate that that would be, you know, good enough in terms of social distancing, considering that in the bus, persons sitting side by side are even much closer than the recommended social distance. Some persons will try to say, well, if I have 34, then I could put 7. No.
He says there are provisions for sporting events to take place, but only with approval.
Sporting events can be allowed under conditions. And the Minister of Local Government, the Minister of Sports, the Minister of Health will, in due course, explain in more detail what these conditions are. This, and just to be clear, this is not a wide-scale return of sports. We have to first of all go through a process where we look at each sporting event and what they require and the specific public health protocols that can be put in place to ensure that they are safe.
The Prime Minister says restrictions remain in place for nursing homes and hospitals. He says as the authorities revise the safety measures, persons must continue to wear their masks in public and sanitize. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Simone Absalom Gale.
8 schools have confirmed cases of COVID-19 since the resumption of face-to-face operations at the start of the January term. Marlon Samuels has more in this report.
292 schools, or 29% of schools across the island, were approved for face-to-face and online classes. Of the total number, 216, or 22% of public schools, started to offer face-to-face classes at the start of the new school term.
With regard to suspected or confirmed cases of COVID-19, 8 schools of the 216 that are approved for face-to-face across 4 regions, Region 1, 2, 5, and 7, have been affected by actual or suspected cases of the COVID-19 virus since the inclusion of face-to-face instructions as guided by the Ministry of Health and Wellness's assessment on COVID-compliant institutions. Donald Quarry had a suspected case of a student being infected who subsequently tested positive. The school was closed on January 21, 2021 for sanitization and psychosocial intervention. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has advised that the school remains closed until they have completed their contact tracing. Penwood High had a staff member who tested positive, and the school was subsequently closed for deep sanitization and will reopen for face-to-face lessons on February 1, 2021. All individuals who came in contact with a positive case have been quarantined. In Region 2, which is St. Thomas, Portland, and St. Mary, Madam Speaker, Region 2 has reported that St. Mary High has delayed its reopening plans as senior member of the administrative leadership team has been exposed to the virus and has been sent into quarantine. This member's spouse tested positive, and the board decided to defer the reopening for a later date. In Region 5, which is Manchester and St. Elizabeth, that region reported 4 cases, 1 for Sydney Pagan, 1 for Fuller's Wood Primary and Infant School, and 2 parent cases from Monroe College.
2 parents of day students at Monroe College reportedly tested positive for COVID-19. Boarders at Monroe and the Hampton School who traveled on the weekend were required to quarantine for 14 days before resuming face-to-face activities. Over in Clarendon, Ver Technical stopped face-to-face activities after a member of the ancillary staff tested positive. It's understood that incidences of COVID-19 in schools appear to be impacted by community transmission. This appears to be the case at the Kemps Hill High School.
Kemps Hill High School is now closed due to the increased number of positive COVID cases within the communities where the students reside. Based on consultation with the parish health inspectors, both Kemps Hill and Ver Technical are scheduled for reopening on February 1, 2021. Madam Speaker, it was reported in the media over the weekend that some school administrators were asking parents to sign letters of indemnity waiver in the event their child or ward contacts the COVID-19 virus while attending face-to-face classes. I want to reiterate that the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information has issued no such directive nor endorsed any proposal for schools to issue letters of indemnity waivers to parents.
Minister of Education Favour Williams says the ministry has implemented school-related mitigation measures, including risk communication, testing by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, as well as safety and education officers. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Marlon Samuels.
Private laboratories are not allowed to do unauthorized COVID-19 testing. Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Christopher Tufton, says private laboratories interested in becoming authorized to conduct private antigen and PCR testing for COVID-19 must contact the Jamaica National Agency for Accreditation.
Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says he is concerned about the number of unauthorized COVID-19 testing sites.
A number of persons now offering tests of all types and using methods that in some instances are not validated, and charging fees too, I may add, that are astronomically high when compared to the cost of these test kits.
He says although a doctor has the right to provide health care, there is also a duty to ensure health and safety for all concerned.
As such, the ministry wishes to reiterate the need for appropriate certification and accreditation of private individuals and companies that want to carry out testing for SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. The ministry continues our private-public partnership as it relates to testing for COVID-19. Currently, we have 7 private labs with 10 locations providing antigen testing and 5 private labs utilizing 6 locations across the island that offers PCR testing.
He notes that COVID-19 test results are now required 3 days before travel to some countries like the United States and Canada.
Recently, the University Hospital of the West Indies is now in a position beyond offering as part of public health to also offer private testing to the public, so testing for a fee.
Private labs are being asked to submit COVID-19 test results as part of surveillance requirements. Meanwhile, Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Jacqueline Bessessa-McKenzie, says the ministry has increased the number of COVID-19 testing sites.
More health centers are utilizing the Jam COVID sites for appointment. So persons would just need to go on the Jam COVID, either the app or the website, and they would be able to see in each parish which are the health centers that are available for testing and to make an appointment.
She is reminding the public that testing is free of cost at public health centers. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Simone Absalom Gale.
And time now for the latest data and analysis on the coronavirus COVID-19 in Jamaica.
Jamaica's COVID-19 death toll now moves to 342 after it recorded another 3 deaths over the past 24 hours. 88 new cases were also recorded, pushing that total to 15,241. Of the newly recorded cases, the parish breakdown is as follows: Kingston and St. Andrew, 24. Manchester, 17. Clarendon and St. James recorded 13 each. St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland recorded 8 each. St. Mary, 3. Hanover, 1, and Trelawney, 1. In the meantime, there were 31 more recoveries, increasing that total to 11,942. Some 100 persons are in hospital, with 8 being moderately ill and 11 critically ill. Melvin Pennant, PBCJ News.
The public is being advised that a section of the roadway along Spanish Town Road in Kingston in the vicinity of Callaloo, Meadows has collapsed. The cause of the latest road failure is unclear. Drivers are asked to use caution and avoid traveling through that area until further notice. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark has outlined the state of Jamaica's economy in light of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Gabriel Thompson examines the minister's statements and tells us more about the movement of the stock exchange and other financial matters in this edition of the Business Report.
This is by far the worst economic downturn in Jamaica's history.
In 2020, the Jamaican government spent $70 billion more than it collected in revenue. Expenditure for the 2021 fiscal year is projected to be 5% higher than 2020. As at April 2020, the government's debt stock stood at $2.087 trillion. In December, it declined slightly to stand at $2.072 trillion.
The only way all of this has been possible, Madam Speaker, is that we started the financial year with an opening cash balance in excess of $90 billion. We spent $466 billion with revenues coming in that were only $397 billion, i.e., we spent $70 billion more than we have collected in revenues. And the expenditure for 2021, even after the third supplementary estimates, is $22 billion or 5% higher than expenditures in 2019-20. So in the pandemic, despite the fact that revenues are $72 billion less, we have expanded expenditure by $22 billion more than last year.
Minister of Finance and the Public Service Dr. Nigel Clark outlined the state of the local economy as he opened debate on the third supplementary estimates in the House of Representatives on Tuesday.
Among other things, the crisis has impacted economic output, which is forecasted to decline precipitously this fiscal year, having declined by 18.4% in the first quarter and 10.7% in the second quarter. Unemployment leapt from 7.3% in January of 2020 to 12.7% in July of 2020, before improving to 10.7% in October.
According to Dr. Clark, government revenue declined by approximately $72 billion or 15% for the first 9 months of the fiscal year when compared to the previous year.
I ask you to reflect on that for a moment. $72 billion gone, but we have to keep the wheels of government turning. Police and fire service and education, hospitals and garbage collection. We have to continue to pay our massive debt or to service it. And on top of that, we have had to provide resources to respond to COVID, inclusive of unprecedented social and economic support, and over a total of $50 billion if you include amounts to the Ministry of Health, amounts to public bodies, the social and economic support, and other areas.
Despite this, Dr. Clark is hopeful for recovery.
Make no mistake about it, COVID-19 has delivered a monumental shock, and the path out is quite clear, but it's a narrow path with little room for error. We won't be able to do this and this and this and that. We will get out of the crisis, and Jamaica will recover and recover stronger. But that path is a narrow one, and we're going to have to be very focused and clear-minded about that. There are many competing demands, Madam Speaker, but we'll have to be very clear on our priorities if we are to avoid a bigger challenge. And again, make no mistake about it, around the world, we're going to see many countries, including some in our region, who are going to end up in big trouble out of this pandemic. And the idea is that we avoid that because it would make recovery much longer.
In Wednesday's trading session, the JSE combined index advanced by 469 points to close at under 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 88 stocks, of which 25 advanced, 44 declined, and 19 traded firm. The junior market index declined by 19 points to close at under 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for Blue Power Group Limited, Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited, and Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica, 1834 Investments Limited, and AMG Packaging and Paper Company. Trading firm were CAC 2000 9.5% preference shares, Siboney Group Limited, and Derrimon Trading Company Limited. Derrimon Trading Company Limited was the volume leader with 3.7 million units, followed by Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financial with over 2 million units, and Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with 1.9 million units. Now for the foreign exchange. The US dollar on Tuesday, January 26, ended trading at $147.88. The Canadian dollar sold for an average $116.88. The pound sterling traded for $203.72, and the euro ended trading at $181.73. Oil prices were little changed on Tuesday as rising coronavirus deaths fed worries about the global demand outlook, but losses were capped by reports of a blast in Saudi Arabia. Brent crude futures ended the session gaining 3 cents to $55.91 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude futures dropped 16 cents to $52.61 a barrel. And that does it for the Wednesday edition of the Business Report on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson.
Many people snore. Snoring is a sign that you may be at risk of health complications, including high blood pressure and heart disease. This week on Living Healthy, Dr. Lawson Myers discusses the causes of snoring and how to prevent it from ruining your sleep and health.
Here in the Blue Mountains, I can hear the wind rustling, I can hear birds chirping, and if I listen really keenly, I can hear the river down below. Beautiful, tranquil sounds that can just relax you, especially during sleep time. But there are sounds when you're sleeping that can create a totally opposite effect, like a snoring bed partner. Have you ever been in an open field when the wind is blowing? It sounds very different than if that same wind is pushing through a tunnel. It's much louder. That's the same premise behind snoring. When your airway is wide open, you don't hear anything. When your airway is constricted, you make a loud noise, and that translates into snoring. Snoring, tiredness in the morning, tiredness throughout the day may be signs that something is limiting your airway or closing your airway when you're sleeping at night. This condition, where it is closed off a little bit, is called hypopnea, and when it's limited so much that the body is not getting oxygen, that's referred to as apnea. Many people have apnea and they're not aware. So if you have a partner that makes a lot of noise when he's sleeping, if your wife is always tired in the morning, if you can't drive from here to Montego Bay without falling asleep at the wheel, if you're always falling asleep at the stop sign or the stoplight, it's not conclusive, but it is an indication that you may possibly have airway issues. Sleep hypopnea or sleep apnea. The air is not able to flow through clearly, and so our body doesn't function optimally. So while I'm not saying that everybody who snores has sleep apnea, snoring coupled with other things like morning fatigue, daytime sleepiness, falling asleep at the stoplight, an inability to travel from Kingston to Montego Bay without having to stop and rest, those are all signs that you may not be resting well, and you may not be resting well because of airway issues. If you're questioning if that could be you, see your physician soon. Listen, catch you next time on Facebook, YouTube, and the LFD website. See you next time on HD's Jazz.
In regional news, 12 Guyanese fishermen remain in Venezuelan custody after their fishing vessel was seized by Venezuela's Navy in Guyana's exclusive economic zone last week. The move by Venezuela escalated diplomatic tensions between the two countries. News source Guyana has the details.
Late yesterday, Guyana's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hugh Todd, held discussions with his Venezuelan counterpart. The Guyana Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the virtual meeting was cordial, and the Venezuelan foreign minister assured that the crew members were being treated with the utmost respect for their human rights. It is unclear when the 12 Guyanese crew members will be released, as Venezuela appears set to take them to court to face charges for illegal fishing, although they were within Guyana's exclusive economic zone. Venezuela has claimed that the two fishing vessels were in its undisputed waters and the fishermen were operating illegally. Guyana has rejected that notion. Guyana maintains that it was the Venezuelan Navy that illegally crossed over into Guyana's economic zone and arrested the fishermen and detained their boats. The Foreign Affairs Minister Hugh Todd also met with the owners of the two fishing vessels yesterday as they expressed their worry about the safety of their crew. The government of Guyana has moved to inform the international community of Venezuela's latest actions, which comes just weeks after the Venezuelan government issued a decree claiming maritime space that belongs to Guyana.
And over in Trinidad, the result after Monday's local government by-elections in 5 districts across the country showed that the People's National Movement lost the Arima Central seat, a traditionally PNM stronghold, to the UNC. The independents also had a strong showing. Kimberly D'Souza brings us more in this report.
Low voter turnout, a surprising result in a PNM stronghold, and a strong independent showing sums up the by-elections for 2021. Voters went to the polls on Monday to choose a new councillor in 5 districts: Alice Glen Monkoko, Arima Central, Cunupia, Hindustan St. Mary's, and Hollywood, and many candidates spoke about low voter turnout. Over 30,000 people were registered to vote in Monday's by-elections, and although voter turnout in local government elections are usually below 50%, initial numbers suggest even lower turnout at the polls. The UNC won the Arima Central, Cunupia, and Hindustan St. Mary's districts, while the PNM won the Alice Glen Monkoko Road and Hollywood districts. At the PNM's Hollywood Point Fortin district office on Monday night, successful candidate Leslie Chang Fong explained the reason why the race between him and independent candidate Christopher Wright was so close.
The independent, where he had scored the highest, is actually where he had born and grown up. So he would have a long-standing and deep bond with that particular neighborly. So that factor would have contributed to him getting that certain rise there in that particular area.
The Cunupia district, while it remained under the United National Congress, saw the People's National Movement securing greater portion of the votes cast, a 38.8%, as compared to the last election, which had 24%. More surprising than the slim electorate was the win by the UNC's Sheldon Fish Garcia, who wrested away the Arima Central District from the PNM's Dr. Juliet Hillary Bernard. Political analyst Dr. Hamid Ghani said the UNC's win may have been a protest vote, as the local government by-elections is a chance to send a message.
Cycling is how we begin our sportscast. There are plans to build a velodrome or cycling track at the National Stadium for elite race programs.
We have already identified a location where we will have a development for the Cycling Association and also to host regional events.
Okay, where in particular is that?
It will still be in the stadium complex here, IPL complex. But those details, will be announced at a later date.
And over to cricket. West Indies batting star Shai Hope and his older brother Kyle have both been reportedly ruled out of next month's Super 50 Cup in Antigua after testing positive for COVID-19. The positive test result was announced by the Barbados Cricket Association. Shai Hope was one of 10 West Indies players who declined selection for the ongoing tour of Bangladesh due to COVID-19 related concerns or personal affairs over the health situation in that country. The Hope brothers will reportedly be replaced by batsman Zachary McCasey and wicketkeeper batsman Tevin Walcott in the Barbados Pride 15-man squad. And that's our package. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same place, for more news and sports right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.